So I invite Colleen Moore, General Board of Church and Society Peace with Justice Director, to share with us on the historic positions of the United Methodist Church and recent actions of GBCS.
Hi, everyone. My name is Colleen Moore. I'm the Director of Peace with Justice at the General Board of Church and Society, the social justice agency of the United Methodist Church. I'm also a steering committee of United Methodist for Kairos Response and a board member of Churches for Middle East Peace. Thank you so much to UMKR for having me speak and for your witness for peace, a just peace in Palestine these past few months. I'm going to talk a little bit about UMC's history of advocating for a just peace in Palestine. Since the 1980s, the church has opposed Israel's brutal military occupation of Palestinian land. The resolution 6111 from the UMC Book of Resolutions in 2016 states, the United Methodist Church opposes continued military occupation of the West Bank, Gaza, and East Jerusalem, the confiscation of Palestinian land and water resources, the destruction of Palestinian homes, the continued building of illegal Jewish settlements, and any vision of a greater Israel that includes the occupied territories and the whole of Jerusalem and its surroundings. This resolution calls for a global boycott on settlement products, ending all arms sales to the entire region, ending financial support for the settlements in the Israeli occupation. This has been on the books since 2004 in some form. And in 2016, the church, responding to annual conferences' calls for divestment, barred investment in 5 banks and construction companies because of violation of human rights, with their business supporting the settlements in the occupied Palestinian territories. And based on this strong theological grounding and our long-standing advocacy for peace and justice in the Middle East, since October 7th, the faith community, including this church, has been a steadfast witness for peace, urging our elected officials to call for a ceasefire. GBCS has been working with Churches for Middle East Peace, a coalition of multiple denominations and organizations, Catholic, Orthodox, Protestant, evangelical, that advocates for equality, human rights, security, and justice for all people in the Middle East. We have called on all parties to negotiate an immediate, permanent, bilateral ceasefire, ensure immediate and adequate access to and provision of humanitarian needs, secure the immediate release of all civilians being held hostage, including civilians in Gaza and the West Bank, and ensure international protection for them, abide by international law and investigate claims of violations of domestic international law, support demilitarizing the conflict, and de-escalatory measures instead of taking retaliatory actions that would beget more violence, and ultimately end the occupation of all peoples in the Middle East and build a lasting, durable peace. If you go to umcjustice.org, we have 2 action alerts where you can send an email to your elected officials to call for a ceasefire and abide by international law. And in March, the Council of Bishops called for a ceasefire. I cannot stress how important this call is, showing that our institution will not be silent, joining other denominations such as United Church of Christ and the Episcopal Church. I just named a lot of amazing work being done, but continuing on the theme of tonight, it's not enough. Say it with me, it's not enough. It's not enough. This week, 97 senators voted for billions of dollars more in aid to Israel with no accountability for human rights violations. 97 senators. Only 3 voted against that. If you're in Oregon or Vermont, please call your senators, Merkley, Welch, and Sanders, thanking them for their vote of conscience. The International Court of Justice ruled back a few months ago that there's a plausibility of Israel committing genocidal actions. And what has the U.S. done? We've cut off aid to UNRWA, the main organization providing humanitarian aid to the region. We've continued to supply unfettered aid to Israel, despite the knowledge that they are committing human rights violations. The fact of the matter is we have to be bolder as a church. We have to be bolder. We need to keep on this long-standing tradition that I've mentioned of ending the occupation, but we have to do more. That resolution that I mentioned earlier, as well as the revised social principles that we've been talking about, is on the table at this General Conference. And we know that there is no military solution to the violence in Israel and Palestine. And as our long-standing discipline has encouraged us, we must prioritize solutions to the root causes of conflict instead of militarized solutions that just engender further violence. We turn on our media and we see protesters at Columbia being villainized by the media instead of covering the massacres that continue in Gaza. When those protested the Vietnam War, they were villainized as terrorist sympathizers. When those protested South African apartheid, they were villainized. When those protested the Iraq War in 2003, they were villainized. And in some spaces, we romanticize that. And now what are they doing? They're villainizing these protests still. We need to be on the right side of history. It is on us to witness for peace. The Bible said, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God." Yes. Will you be a peacemaker? Yes. What side of history will you stand on? Will you join us in working for a ceasefire in Gaza, to end the occupation, to stop the settlements, to end the siege of Gaza, for a just peace in Palestine, for equal rights for Palestinians, for safety and security for all of those living in the Middle East, Israelis and Palestinians? Will you stand with us? Yes. Will you join us to honor Jesus' call to be peacemakers? Yes. Living our faith isn't just a label. It's not just something that you check off. It's about living the values of justice. As we've been hearing all week at this General Conference, now is the time, United Methodists, to stand up for peace with justice in Israel and Palestine. Thank you. God bless.
Invite Jane Easley to come on up, Methodist Liaison Office Representative. Jane.
All right, Jane. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, yeah. I have to do that in church too. Hi everyone, my name is Jane Easley. I'm an elder from Northern Illinois Conference. Woohoo! And I am your Methodist Liaison Officer in Jerusalem. We have 3 staff in Jerusalem. I represent the United Methodist Church. My colleague, Reverend Dave Hardman, represents the Methodist Church in Britain. And we have a Palestinian admin named Samar Hashway. We carry out the ministries of the Board of Global Ministries and work ecumenically. That's just an important point to bring up because it's kind of invisible. We don't have any United Methodist churches in Palestine. We don't have any United Methodist projects. That's not an oversight, that's intentional. They already have Christians there. They don't need our brand name. They don't need us to come in and say, oh no, it needs to be a Methodist project. We say, wow, you're doing great ministry there. How can we come alongside you? So we don't start anything. We don't start new projects. We say, wow, how is God working through you now? So we have various advanced projects we work with. I'm really pleased to tell you of the support we receive from United Methodist Committee on Relief. With the war in Gaza, UMKR released $10,000 solidarity grants. Man, is it fun to call your Palestinian friends and say, what would you do with $10,000 because of what the war has cost you? And our advanced members are so creative. They used that money to provide food baskets for people who couldn't get to grocery stores. They used that money to buy tablets for children who couldn't get over from Area A to Area C to go to Hope Secondary School, the Christian school in Beit Jala. They used that money to provide psychosocial support in Gaza for the children who were traumatized so that they could play a little bit while their parents were waiting in the line for food. This is what your UMKR money has done, and it makes me so proud. It's kind of invisible because it doesn't have the UMC stamp, but we're a servant church. We're living the best of our faith. But I want to tell you just little bits of what it's like on the ground. I live in Jerusalem. I actually live in Beit Jala in the West Bank. I feel very safe. I'm not in Gaza. People keep thinking I'm living in war. I'm not. I'm fine. But I see the tremendous effects of this war. After October 7th, all of the ways out of the West Bank were closed for over 6 weeks. So I told you about our Palestinian admin, Samar. Samar lives in the West Bank, like me. I didn't get to see her for 6 weeks. With my American passport, I was evacuated to Jerusalem, and I stayed in the Church of England. Samar, even though she has Jerusalem ID, could not get out of the West Bank because she doesn't have my American passport. Samar has family in Gaza. Many of her family members, she's Greek Orthodox, so many of her family members sheltered in St. Porphyrios Orthodox Church in Gaza. You might remember that there are two Christian churches in Gaza, Holy Family, which is Roman Catholic, St. Porphyrios, which is Orthodox. You might remember when the IDF bombed, the Israeli Defense Forces bombed St. Porphyrios. Samar lost 4 family members. Her aunt, her first cousin's wife, and their baby child. So Samar sends me, I'm in Jerusalem, I can't even see her, and she's sending me pictures of her dead relatives. There are only about 700 Christians left in Gaza, and they are all sheltering in these 2 churches. It is possible after this war that there will be no Christian witness in Gaza. That is just heartbreaking. The Christians run hospitals and schools, and they're yes, Christians benefit, but they're serving their Muslim siblings. We are a witness of love and compassion and respect for our siblings there. All of that could fall apart because of the oppression of this ongoing war. The oppression of not being able to get from area A to area C, the fear of settlers coming in and stealing land and demolishing homes. Thank you for your support of the United Methodist Church. I do want to tell you that on Wednesdays, we have a Zoom every Wednesday. It's at 8 o'clock Jerusalem time, but it's 1 o'clock Eastern time, noon Central time, and so forth. If you'd like to listen to that Zoom, please send an email to office@MLO Jerusalem. That's Methodist Liaison Office. So office@mlojerusalem.org, and you can watch the weekly Zoom with people, generally Palestinian Christians, but we also have Muslim and Jewish presenters as well. So we are there, we are caring, we are respecting, and we are working for justice. Thank you.
Paula, I don't know about a lot, but I will do my best. 4 young black college men, Ezell Blair, David Richmond, Franklin McCain, and Joseph McNeil, refused to get up from a segregated Woolworths lunch counter in Greensboro, North Carolina, 92 miles from Charlotte, the site of our postponed 2020 General Conference. These young black men were inspired by the practice of civil disobedience practiced by Mohandas Gandhi in India, 8,308 miles away. Today, we stand together in Charlotte at this rally to protest injustice and segregation happening in Palestine, a place and people 6,229 miles away. Yet no matter the distance, systemic racism has a global reach. No matter the distance, injustice has a global reach. No matter the distance, segregation and anti-blackness have a global reach. Today we stand together in Charlotte in solidarity with our Palestinian siblings to denounce the militarization and state-sanctioned violence they are living with every day, just like many of our black, indigenous, people of color siblings in the U.S. and other parts of the world do. We stand together in Charlotte in solidarity with our Palestinian siblings to proclaim the same words Reverend Dr. King uttered not so long ago during segregation here. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. We stand together in Charlotte in solidarity with our Palestinian siblings to announce to the church, the United Methodist Church, and the world that any time the most vulnerable among us hurts and is harmed, the reign of God stares us in the face, asking us, what are you going to do to love, to heal, and to feed my sheep? So what will we do? Systemic racism and oppression are resilient, relentless, and worldwide. And so must our love be in action. We must divest of the ways our unjust policies and practices support Israeli occupation of Palestine. We must divest of our inequitable financial policies and practices that fund the continued policing and violence of Palestinian bodies and land. We must invest in dismantling racism anywhere and everywhere in the world, especially as disciples of Jesus. We must invest in telling the truth about how systemic racism and oppression has unjustly claimed the lives of many Black, Indigenous people of color here and around the world. It is only when we tell the truth that we will all be free. In the words of Lila Watson, Indigenous Australian artist and activist, if you have come to help me, you are wasting your time. But if you have come because your liberation is tied up with mine, then let us work together. We rally not to help our Palestinian siblings. We rally to announce to the church and the world that our liberation is bound up with theirs. We are not free until they are free.
We must divest and resist now, 'cause it's gone on far too long. Ah, yes, it's gone on far too long. I'm telling you, it's gone on far too long. We must divest and resist now, 'cause it's gone on far too long. And we won't be silent anymore. Somebody's killing our children, and it's gone on. Oh yes, it's gone on. I'm telling you, it's gone on. Somebody's killing our children, and it's gone on. And we won't be silent anymore. No, we won't. No, we won't be silent anymore. Somebody's hurting our siblings, and it's gone on far too long. Oh yes, it's gone on. Oh yes, it's gone on. Somebody's hurting our siblings, and it's gone on. And we won't be silent, and no, we won't. And we won't be silent anymore. No, we won't. And we won't be silent anymore.
So I invite Dove Baum, who is director of AFC's Action Center for Corporate Accountability. Dove is the co-founder of Who Profits from the Occupation and of the Coalition of Women for Peace in Israel.
Thank you, everybody. So yeah, I'm a Jewish Israeli, and I have lived here in the US now for 11 years, so you can tell by my white hair that I lived most of my adult life in Israel as an activist in Israel. So I want to tell you a little bit about the beginning of that story. I was a very curious kid. I grew up in a small town, a suburb of Tel Aviv, and of course I've never seen any Palestinians. Maybe day workers, you know, that would come and be the gardeners. Segregation, yes? And then I read Alan Patton's book, Cry the Beloved Country. I don't know if you heard about it. I was a very curious kid, and I read that book about South Africa, and I was like, how come the white people didn't know? How come they didn't know that there is apartheid and it was bad? I mean, how can it be? And I looked around me, and I think the same week I went to the mall, and there was this young Palestinian kid about my age who was trying to get into the mall, as I was. And you know, everybody in Israel has to carry an ID, and your ID actually says your nationality, Jewish or Palestinian. By the way, Jewish is not considered a religion in Israel, it's a nationality, okay? So, you know, I show my ID, I go in, she shows her ID, the security guard throws this on the ground and says, you have to wait here, you cannot go in, we're calling security, blah, blah, blah. A 12-year-old child, my age, And I looked at that, and I just read that book, you know? And I was like, okay. And I came back home, and my parents had a guest at the house that they were entertaining, and he worked for the General Security Services, and they were joking and telling jokes about torture. And it dawned on me that Alan Patton's beloved country was also my own. Now, it is as simple as that. Today, we have all major human rights organizations around the world calling Israel an apartheid state, including Israeli human rights organizations. But you don't need them. It's enough to be a 12-year-old in Israel to know that this is apartheid. There are 12 million people living between the river and the sea, in that land that is both called Israel and Palestine by different people. 6 million people are Jewish, 6 million are Palestinian. Most Palestinians living on the land, all of them under Israeli rule, cannot vote, cannot organize, have severe restrictions on getting married among themselves, and of course you cannot marry Israelis and Palestinians, Jewish and Palestinians. They cannot get married inside the country. Severe restrictions on travel, of course. You heard about Zone A, Zone B, Zone C, the segregation between different Palestinian communities. If you are Palestinian, your property can be taken at will. Your children can be killed with impunity. You can be held without any trial or even charged for years. Laws are different. You cannot buy land in most of the country. You know, what is that? What do we call that? Apartheid. So I am part of a group of Israelis called Israelis Against Apartheid. And I also work here with the American Friends Service Committee. And I've been doing this work for many years, trying to do the research needed to find out the names of corporations and institutions here in this country and around the world that are directly supporting Israeli apartheid, Israeli occupation, Israeli colonization, Israeli genocide. And I remember coming to the General Conference in Tampa, Florida in 2012, asking the United Methodist Church to divest from Israeli apartheid. And then coming back again to Portland, and this is my third General Conference. And I want to tell you, I am deeply ashamed today to be an Israeli. And I'm sure many of you are deeply ashamed today to be American, especially after sending off another $14 billion in military aid to Israel. I'm speaking to you as an Israeli and as a Jew, and I'm asking you and I'm begging you, please stop the supply of weapons, stop the supply of arms, stop the supply of money, stop the impunity, stop the diplomatic support, stop enabling Israeli crimes. They are not helping us, they are killing us. These crimes are crimes that are unforgivable. These are crimes that we will have to live with the consequences of these for many generations to come. In the name of the future of these two peoples in this land, the Holy Land of Palestine, of Israel, we need to make it stop. And I want to also refer your attention to this sign that says apartheid-free communities. I was so happy to see it here today. Any of you who is a member of a congregation can go online, apartheid-free.org, and just sign on to that pledge as a congregation, as a community, to become apartheid-free, to oppose apartheid everywhere and in Palestine, and to join others in cutting all of our ties to Israeli apartheid. And today, I think it is high time for the United Methodist Church to do the same, to divest from Israeli apartheid. Thank you.
All right, friends, I want to say a word on behalf of an organization that I have the privilege to serve as the executive director of. It is called the Federation of Indian American Christians of North America. It includes Catholics, Orthodox Christians, evangelical Christians, mainline Christians, all who are standing up for human rights, particularly for those who are most persecuted in the country of India, including those who are Muslim, Sikh, Dalits, the lowest caste, and indigenous peoples in the country of India. And I want to share just for a moment with you what the reality for Christians in India has to do with the Christians in Palestine. The new Federation of Asian American United Methodists at this General Conference is asking you to pass a new resolution on the persecution of Christians and other minorities in India, to designate India as a country of particular concern, something the State Department has refused to do. Why? For engaging in systematic, egregious violations of religious freedom as defined by the International Religious Freedom Act and the Bipartisan Congressional Lantos Commission, and to ask that our churches and civil society denounce the rapid rise of ethno-nationalism in India. Here we have something in common. Ethno-nationalism, the use of religion to legitimate systematic violence against religious minorities in Palestine and in India. The New York Times has reported anti-Christian vigilantes continue to sweep through villages, storm through churches, burn Christian literature, attack schools, arrest nuns, assault worshippers. In many cases, the police and members of India's governing party, the BJP, are helping them. In church after church, the very act of worship has become dangerous. The ecumenical Delhi-based United Christian Forum, my dear friend John Dayal, a Catholic lay activist, reports that 700 attacks took place in 2023 against Christians. Fiacona, the organization I am directing, has documented well over 2,000 attacks on churches, clergy, and laity, the burning, the bulldozing of over 400 churches in 2023 alone. Open Doors USA ranks India as the top in the 11 of the most dangerous countries in the world to be a Christian, at a persecution level called extreme, beyond Pakistan, Iran, and Afghanistan, worse than Saudi Arabia or China. India's Foreign Contribution Regulation Act alone impacts hundreds of organizations. It has made illegal organizations such as Amnesty International, Compassion International, Mother Teresa's Missionaries of Charity. And this surge in violence is propelled by something called Hindutva, friends, a religious nationalism. It is a supremacist political ideology that has become state policy at the state level and federal level, and it conflates a militant Hindu ideology and Jim Crow-style laws applied to the minority groups across India. It distorts Hinduism. It exploits the lives and the labor of millions of people. It has taken their land, especially those who are Dalits, those who are indigenous women, and the alarming levels of state-sanctioned violence against Christians, lower caste Dalits, and religious minorities on the street and the state structure must be made an international reality and international response. It is high time. With India as the largest democracy in the world, we are no longer a democracy. And so you see the parallels for Christians who are advocating for religious minorities in India, and as we advocate for the liberation, the protection, the safeguard of our siblings in Palestine. If these policies sound familiar to you, as United Methodists, with a connection to India, as I do, my family going back generations, so they're Methodist missionaries into Afghanistan, medical missionaries, where Christians have lived for 2,000 years. It is a matter of justice for us to stand with international accountability alongside our Palestinian siblings. So I ask for your support for India as we pray for and support and advocate for Palestine.
Making Jewish settlements against international law, and the whole world knew about it. Everybody was saying these illegal Jewish settlements, they are internationally illegal, and yet Israel continued to build these Jewish settlements in the West Bank. Yes, I got the message. I have only 1 minute left. Well, in my last minute, I want to thank United Methodist for what you are doing here in this conference. But I want to say, this is not enough. You can do more. Amen? Amen. Yes, please do more. How many more Palestinian children in Gaza has to be killed before you act aggressively. Isn't 15,000 Palestinian children killed in Gaza, isn't that enough? How about 35,000 Palestinians, men, women, children, killed in the Gaza Strip? Isn't that enough to move our hearts and to want us to do the right thing and want us to impact our government, our senators, our congresspeople? I think it is enough. How many doctors have to be killed? How many journalists have to be killed? How many houses have to be demolished? About 65% of Gaza is demolished right now. How many more children have to die under the rubbles of their homes? I urge you, United Methodists, to do more than what you are doing now. Thank you so much.
Please speak right into the mic.
Yeah. So I'm going to invite my brother, the Reverend Lloyd Nierota, to come forward. My name again is Neil Christie. I'm representing the Love Your Neighbor Coalition. And I'd like to introduce very briefly the Reverend Lloyd Nierota, who will speak on apartheid now and then, relating to us the situation relating to Palestine, South Africa, what we have to learn from South Africa's apartheid in the ICJ case. So Lloyd.
Okay, thank you, Neil Christie. Thank you all who are here. Thank you, delegates. My name is Lloyd Nyarota. I was born in a small village in southern Africa. But I want to tell you something. When I was born in that village without leaving the village, staying there, I was born in southern Rhodesia. And when I was a baby, I then lived in Rhodesia. And then when I was in middle school, I then lived in Zimbabwe, Rhodesia, still in the same village. When I was becoming a teenager, then I lived in Zimbabwe. Without leaving my village, brothers and sisters, that is what colonialism can do. All that just happened because in 1890, a fellow British who left London, he just arrived in Zimbabwe. He put up a Union Jack. He called the place Rhodesia after his own name. He claimed that the whole land now belongs to the Queen, and he named the city arrived on Queen Victoria, and he changed every village and every place and give them British names. That is what colonialism can do. And I can tell you that if you are born as a baby in one country, in the same village, as you become a toddler, you are told you are in another country in the same village. When you become a young boy, you are told you are in another country in the same village. When you are a teenager, you are told you are now living in another country in the same village. That's confusing for all children. That's confusing if it is happening to the Palestinian children. That is confusing. And that is what colonialism can do. Now, when independence came, we were celebrating. But as I was becoming a teenager, I just realized that our neighbors in South Africa were going through serious systems. And by the way, the village I grew up in, the British called it a reserve. That means we found ourselves in a reserve. We found ourselves, our village, changing a name. It was now a reserve. They declared one thing, that all our kings were turned into chiefs because there was only one king in London. There could be no two kings in the British area. That is what colonialism can do. And you know what happened? As I was becoming a teenager, becoming politically conscious, begin to understand what it meant to live in a free country, we only realized that our brothers and sisters in South Africa were going through apartheid. You know, when you move from colonialism to apartheid, it is painful. Maybe some of you who have never lived in a colonized place, Maybe some of you who have never experienced apartheid, when those of us who have lived it, when those of us who have been raised in it, when we mention it that this is colonialism and you are moving from colonialism to apartheid, it is painful to see that happening. And it happened, in apartheid South Africa. Blacks and whites could not walk in the same streets. Blacks and whites, they could not live in the same places. They turned the villages and called them Bandustans. Bandustans were told, you are independent, you can have your own laws, but you actually have no power. You actually have no authority. They were called the Bandustan authorities. And you know what? In 2012, my first time to visit Palestinian, I was surprised to hear that in the same road, I had to remember I'm in area A, area B, area C, and I could not comprehend where I was. I had to ask, am I in area A or in area B? And you are told now you are crossing that line, you are getting to area C. And I'm saying, how many countries am I moving into? How many countries am I traveling in? And you are told, this is just one street. And when I met the Palestinian children, when I saw those children, when I kneeled down to say hello to them, and just remember that these are the children someone is calling terrorists, I remembered one thing. In Rhodesia, when we were fighting for our liberation in Rhodesia, our freedom fighters, the Rhodesians, called them terrorists. The British called them the terrorists. The Americans called them the terrorists, but we called them freedom fighters. So your terrorist could be my freedom fighter. It only depends on where you are standing. It only depends on what is your understanding of life. It only depends about how many privileges you have got in life. So a terrorist could be a freedom fighter. Yes, things could happen in a war situation. If you put your heel on my foot, what do you expect me to do if I continue begging and you keep on pressing harder and harder and harder? I have to push you to go. When I push you, then you call me a terrorist. That's what colonialism and apartheid can do. And I can tell you what I observed in Israel and Palestine surpassed what we experienced in Rhodesia. In Rhodesia, we could not live in the same villages. We could not live in the same places with the British and the white people. But at least we were allowed to drive, if you have a car, in the same highways. But the Palestinians cannot drive in a highway that an Israeli drives in. Hey, they've taken apartheid to another level. And I say, this is surprising. And my last time in Israel and Palestinian land was in May of 2023. May in 2023, there are people in this world who are still waking up one morning in their house, and the following morning they are told, you don't belong here. You have to demolish your house. If you don't demolish it, we come and demolish your house and we send you the bill. In 2023, it is still happening. Apartheid is not right. My brothers and sisters, there's something that made apartheid South Africa fall. It was when the world began to see that apartheid is bad. They divested. They boycotted apartheid. They sanctioned apartheid. And that is what makes apartheid come to the end. United Methodist divest, sanction, and remove your money from making your brother suffer. Our dollars that we pray on every Sunday, that we pastors raise our hands and put to the cross, you take those and then invest them in apartheid. What a shame.
Good evening. The Native American International Caucus of the United Methodist Church will now share with you a story and a reflection from our hearts and our lives in sacred step with our siblings in Palestine.
Iwinitu Ilongamaki, peace all my relatives. One day, the animals of the forest decided to have a contest. They wanted to see who best embodied strength. Well, Mountain Lion came down and joined the circus. And then Possum came and joined that circle. And then Deer, she came, and she was running and joined that circle. And Bear, and they all gathered around, and the contest was about to start when Man showed up. He was late, but before he joined that circle, he hid something in the tall grasses. And then he stepped over and he said, "I'm here. The contest can begin." Well, Mountain Lion stepped up and said, "Strong claws, watch this." Meow, and began to dig, and dug so long that smoke rose. And a new river was formed, and then stepped in front of everyone and said, "Meow," and they said, "Back it up." Well, Possum, she didn't want to be outdone, did she? And she looked and she said, "Strong tail, watch this." And up the tree she went, and out on a branch, and she wrapped that tail, and she hung there and moved back and forth, and she said, "Hey, I got a strong tail." They said, "That's really cute." And she came down and did what she knows how to do. Deer stepped up and said, "Fellas, I got strong legs and they're fast." And she took off running to one end of the forest back and never drew a hard breath. And she said, "What do you think?" And they said, "Strong legs, you got some. You're the..." And Bear stepped up. "Strong claws, strong back. I am strength all over." Took off running, ripped up trees from their roots, dove in the water, pushed them to the other side, and planted a new forest, and came back. And they said, Bear is the winner." And Man stepped up and said, "Hey, what about me?" And they said, "Oh yeah, Man, go ahead, show us what you got." And right then, Man, he jumped in the middle. He did a cartwheel. He did a backflip. He rolled forward on the ground and hopped up and said, "I am the winner. I am straight." They said, "It's quite entertaining, but we're really not thinking that was strength. What you got?" And with that, he decided to climb to the top of a tree. And from there, he plucked fresh coconuts. And he began to juggle them, and he threw them down. He hopped down, and he said, "Strength, I'm the winner." And they said, climbing was pretty good, and juggling was really entertaining. We'll give you one last chance, because that's not strength. And by now, Man was so angry. He looked around and he said, "Oh yeah? You want to see strength? You want to know what strength is? Watch this." And with that, he went to the tall grasses, and he bent down and lifted what he had hidden. And he stepped in the middle, and in the blink of an eye, boom, boom, boom! And the animals began to fall. And those that could still run were running. And Man stood in the center screaming, "I'm the winner. I am strength." But you see, the ones that survived that contest, they met in the heart of the forest where Man never goes. And they looked at each other and they said, "What was that? What was that? Was that strength? Was it, my friends? No, that is death. And all of the animals in the forest knows that man does not know the difference between strength and death. And that is when we walk in the forest, we walk alone. For all of our animal relatives knows that we do not know. And they still run from us. We are the only ones who can learn the difference between strength and death and stop the war.
Children are watching us. They don't often listen to what we say. They certainly do not listen to our advice, especially as they get older. But they are watching and they are learning. And they are going to live with what we leave behind and what we teach them and what we do, and in our tone. I am a miracle. My sister is a miracle. My Native brothers and sisters who are here with us today are miracles. We are miracles because we were not supposed to be here. We're supposed to be gone. We do not take lightly our lives and the sacrifices that our ancestors have made. When we walk now, we carry our ancestors and their hearts with us. I am the great-granddaughter of a Sand Creek Massacre survivor who survived when she was a child. I am the daughter of a boarding school survivor. I live now without speaking my language. And as I sat in legislation session today, and we love those translators, but those are not the languages those people should be speaking. Those are languages of the oppressor. And that is the language I am left to speak. The rejuvenation of our languages means so much. The reclamation of our identity and our place means so much. When we are told that this is a country of immigrants, where do we stand? Our children are listening. And when I hear the stories and I see the pictures of what's coming through from many places, Palestine certainly, I think of the children because this child, my child, and those yet to come carry genocide, invisibility, and continued efforts of erasure in our hearts, and we live with the fallout of that. Be mindful that as we are being asked to divest and to boycott and to help, and hopefully all of these things will happen, that's just the beginning. What has happened now is going to take generations to repair. We are still healing. And our hearts go out to the families, but especially to the children and those yet to come. What are they going to be living in? What are they going to be living in? We do not want to be complicit in yet another genocide, because we had one here and we still don't want to fess up to it yet. The truth must come out. We can only really move forward. We can only move together in unity when we know each other truthfully. When I can know your truth and hear your truth without taking it to myself to feel guilty. It's not about guilt. It's about truth. It's about strength. It is not about death. Thank you.
It's not enough. This is your part. It's not enough. It's not enough. It's not enough. And then you're going to do this. We've got to pray and divest. Clap, clap. Pray and divest. Clap, clap. Pray and divest. No more funding genocide. Let's try that. We've got to pray and divest. Pray and divest. Pray and divest. No more funding genocide. It's not enough. It's not enough. It's not enough to offer thoughts and prayers.
It's not enough
to say that we care.
It's not enough
to hope that things will change. We've got to pray with our feet. Pray with our feet. Pray and divest. No more funding genocide. It's not enough. It's not enough. Louder. It's not enough to watch the news and weep.
It's not enough
to cry out for peace.
It's not enough
to criticize and blame. We've got to pray and divest. Pray and divest. Pray and divest. No more funding genocide.